Life is always about relationships. No matter what we are, in our work, in our home, everything surrounds us is relationships. And in those relationships, we can have times where they just blow and they work well wonders for us. And then there's times when we get hit. And how does it affect us in so many different ways? Welcome to Let's Get Real. Today, we're going to be talking about just that and so many other things. My name is Glenda Kroll, and I am here as one of your co hosts to welcome you and talk about the relationships and so forth. Nicole, good afternoon. How are
Hello, my friend. How are you? Always good to see you on Wednesday. I love our Wednesdays. It keeps me like revved up to get through the week. It's like that midweek little boost to get to the weekend. So I absolutely love it. And, Glenda, I met this lady on LinkedIn. I'm going to say probably a month ago. And we had just such a good, impactful, and interesting conversation that I wanted to get her on here because it's all about not only getting real, but it's about helping people get through things. And being those people that can guide or at least listen, if nothing else. And so this lady, she's amazing, and I'm going to tell you just a few things she works on with her clients. Transformation in consciousness. Now, that's right up my alley because I am a firm believer in the subconscious. Rapid subconscious beliefs. She also reconciles the masculine and feminine energies, and I'm all over that because when you can balance those, you actually become your own soulmate. She also addresses religious sexual reconstruction, which I think is in some cases such a taboo subject, and maybe we need to normalize it now because there's a lot of issues in maybe marriages that aren't quite merging that way. And she also addresses ancestral and generational trauma. So let's welcome to our stage Karyn Lynn Payton.
Hello, Glenda. Hello,
and
Nicole.
welcome.
So nice of you to have me on.
Oh, I'm so excited to get this conversation started. And I'll be honest, I don't even remember what we started talking about, but it flowed in such an amazing way on LinkedIn. And we did have a lot in common, but there's some things here that, I guess I would say are not really addressed or talked about. So, I would just start with, how did you get to where you are now? What transpired in your life? Or when you look back, what was your catalyst to want to help people?
Oh, I probably have always been one of those people that wanted to help people because my degree was in psychology. But right when I got out of college, I worked in a psych hospital and quickly discovered that was not my calling. And this is hilarious because, there's that whole story of when you run from something, it catches up to you. I exited, went into business, and I had grown up in a very Christian conservative home, but I had been a rebel. Okay, so I'd gotten kicked out of my own church when I was 17. And so in my mind, I really thought that, and none of that stuff was attached to me. I've been getting in trouble since I was 3 years old about specifically saying things like, that doesn't make sense. If it had something to do with the Bible or a story, it's like, that doesn't make sense. And so it was constant. I think somebody called me a Jezebel spirit at one point. Anyway, so I had gotten, unbeknownst to me, okay, I've got all this 10% of my prefrontal cortex thinking I know which direction I'm going. I end up marrying a very conservative Christian guy. And it was immediately evident. I mean, and just for those people out there who have experienced purity culture, the reason that I got married, my dad was a pastor, was that I had had sex with him. And in the eyes of God, in Christianity, if you have sex with somebody, then you're married in the eyes of God. Okay, so how did I not rebel about that? It's a subconscious belief. It's a program. It's a program that I got, sucked right into. So married him. The marriage was quite difficult to begin with. Married 23 years. I had a series of a lot of significant health issues during that time. Right after I got married, maybe 3 years, I was diagnosed with RA, which is rheumatoid arthritis. It was very severe. I was in insane amounts of pain. And this is prefixing what I do now. I remember being devastated, and they gave me all the equipment and the meds to be able to, so my hands wouldn't be twisted. And I remember being inconsolable for like 3 days. Like, I don't want this. I don't want this. And I woke up on the fourth day, and I remember feeling something kind of just click in my brain, in my head. I said, I don't want this. And I don't have it. Okay. And I just tossed everything out, all the meds, everything. And I've had people since, they say, oh, it was just like mind over matter. No, that's actually the power of quantum. That's the power of your thoughts that you have. And I was walking, I was 24 years old. And I remember going back to the rheumatologist at the University of Washington 6 months later. He said, you're doing so well. And I said, I threw everything out. He said, you can't, you are, he retested everything, and I was still ANA positive. He goes, you still have it. Okay. And I said, yeah, but I don't. I don't have that. Anyway, fast forward again 6 months, and all my tests came back negative. But I had, if you want to think about it like an instantaneous healing, it was an instantaneous healing. The blood work took a while, but that. And then I'm married, and this person, even with a degree in psychology, I did not recognize clinical narcissism. And I hear that a lot. I've had friends who are doctors in the field, and they're married to narcissists, and they never even recognize it yet. Yeah. So, so I didn't see it. He had a lot of other mental health issues that really covered that part up. And we were raising, our family had 4 children. And the reality is I ignored every single message that my body gave me that I needed to get out. Our bodies, on the level of a cell, we have 50 trillion cells in our bodies, are speaking to us. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And you can relate to everything you're saying.
I'm so glad. But I was, these messages I was getting, I got the worst bunions, like my feet were crooked. And in Eastern medicine, when you have problems with the feet, it's usually you're going the wrong direction in your life. Okay. And one after the next, of things that were happening. The relationship was abusive in every way. I think
this is sad because we are triplets.
Oh my God. Well,
triplets.
Okay. The volume of the women that I work with, that we're not alone. Okay. We're just, we'll get into that part later. So
Karyn, can I ask you a quick question though,
Yes.
before we get too far past it? When you said once you had sex with your ex-husband, you were considered married in the eyes of the church. So you knew, I think you kind of knew what you were getting into maybe, but did he pressure you into it, or did parents pressure you into the marriage?
I think that he had, now, having been married to him 23 years and divorced for 15, and he had a lot of very strange sexual issues, okay, that were immediately obvious when we got married. I should have had it annulled. As in, I think that he was probably a closet gay, and because of the religious issues, he could never actually come out. That's a guess. There were a lot of other things, and that's not uncommon when you're subjected to any kind of purity culture, okay, which is what the church has 5 main things that they consider massive sin. Okay, sex and sex. It's right up there, which we need to talk about later on, because of the fact that of sexuality being so powerful and such a connection to source energy. And women are so repressed around our sexuality because our sexuality is our connection with the creative force energy and is powerful. Okay. But if you're living in an environment where only the man, he has sexual needs and a woman has sexual obligations, okay,
Nice.
which is completely antithetical to actual spirituality. So
Oh, yes.
it's a,
Wow.
it's a disaster. So where were we? Was I getting rid of him yet?
No, but you see, when you started, and we got to look back for the years, because I get it. You're looking back of many years ago, where first of all, that once you enter in, divorce in those years was not highly sought out. People basically stayed in a relationship. I remember my parents, who probably should have divorced from the beginning, continued on for many reasons. And even when I got married, at my point, divorce wasn't something that was really happening a lot. It was sort of the start of things. So when you were talking about entering into your relationship, I'm assuming, you being probably in the same age bracket as the two of us, that at that point in time you go into it with high hopes, hoping for something else, but you're not jumping out of it because it wasn't the thing to do in those years. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't the thing to do. I mean, it wasn't until, the late 70s that women even had the ability to have any independence from their partners. But here's how I would say is that, this actually just unfortunately leaps into politics and everything else, is that, I don't think it's a lot different now. Okay. People still go into marriage, okay, thinking till death do us part. Okay. That's exactly what they're thinking, not realizing that that is a Christian myth that was created, okay, specifically for the wealth of the church. Okay, so those are generational and ancestral beliefs that we come in with. And they're actually that belief. Okay, I remember one of my ex-husband's favorite things to say was divorce is not an option for us. Okay, so it sounds really good, right? Well, what that really means is you're going to endure, and that's the word, any kind of situation indefinitely, forever and ever, because of the fact that you made a vow. And there's nowhere in the entire scriptures where there's a marriage vow, not one. I mean, it wasn't until the 16th century that it was even created. Okay, so you're right. But right now is the same. I think the divorce rate sitting at about 56%. The Christian right has a real big issue with the fact that 72% of divorces are filed by women, okay, unless the woman is educated, and then it's 92%.
Wow.
And so what they're saying is, this is the most hilarious part and the most off part, is what they're saying is women have less of a commitment to marriage than men do. And it's like, that's actually the polar opposite. Every single one of I've never, ever had a client who had a frivolous divorce. She spent years and years and years deciding but yeah, you don't just go, whoo, one day I'm going to get out. Oh, and I just listened to JD Vance, who is the vice presidential candidate for Trump.
Yeah.
And he just did this long spiel about the fact that what the sexual revolution did that was so bad is that it created people who could just easily get out of their marriages, which may have benefited the two people or not, he said. But what it really harmed was the children. Well, now here we go with another subject, because I have part of the books that I'm writing. I have interviewed a couple of amazing women who are PhDs, and they were at the University of it's a university in Australia, but they were Islamic, so they were Muslim, and they were two PhD students who did an entire study on emotional divorce. And you, Glenda, you had parents who emotionally divorced. My children had parents that emotionally divorced, at a tiny age. And the damage to the child is so much greater because of the fact of what we're dealing with. And what we ignore is the energy.
Absolutely.
You and I walk into a room, we are intuitive, we are feminine, we feel the energy. Our children do the very same thing. Right. They feel the energy of the room. They don't even have to ever hear an argument, and they're feeling that energy. And we know that our children, from the time of in utero to age 7, their brains are in what's called a theta state. That's a hypnotic state. So they are like little computers. Okay, it's true. They're being programmed. Yeah. And they're not just being programmed with what they hear and what they see. They're being programmed with the energy, and they're being programmed with, this is what love looks like. Well, unfortunately.
Well, that's exactly what made me make my decision, because, for years I was miserable. And then one day I sort of said to myself that I'm lying to myself, and this is what I'm teaching my children. Yep. And it was that was the final time when I, like, all through the years I was miserable on so many things. But, I didn't want my children coming from a broken home. And then one day I said to myself, my home is already broken. I am lying to myself, and I'm lying to my children. And that is when I said, I'm done. I gotta leave.
Yes. And you probably look back and regret the amount of time it took, because it damaged your children. That is a grief that I will hold. I have fabulous children. I have 4 of them, but what we're not taught is that truth matters. It matters on a physical and an emotional and a spiritual level. So your body is connected to truth. We have 3 parts to the conscious. We have the subconscious, which is a very powerful operating system. It runs 90 to 95%. It runs at 4 million bits per second. You cannot overpower it. Okay. Then you have the 10%. This is your conscious mind. This is your creative mind. This is the mind who thinks that what your desires and wants, what you want. And then we have the superconscious mind. And that Carl Jung, who is my favorite psychiatrist, but who really delves into the spiritual, he says the superconscious is our connection with truth and spirit. It is our divine essence. It's what you cannot separate from God. But that's what we subdue. That's what we repress, because when we experience a lie, for instance, being married to a narcissist, you just experience lies. That's all you experience is lies, to the point that you don't know the difference between a lie and a truth, or even up or down.
Yep.
But your superconscious does. So you have this disconnect between truth, okay, which is the superconscious, which runs through you, which you're connected to before you get involved in those relationships, and the lies. And you just said it, Glenda. You just said you realized you were living a lie. That was an epiphany. Straight from the superconscious. But the problem is that women and men, because I have just as many clients, narcissism is not limited to men. I have just as many clients who don't even realize they're married to women they're usually covert narcissists. But deep breath, because I lost my thought. One of you interject, and I've got to close a door. Would you mind if I do that?
No, go right ahead.
I can hear you.
So, narcissism really starts off, and what we don't really seem to realize is narcissistic people are born into families of other narcissists.
And trauma. A lot of it's trauma, like the mother trauma. It's what I found with mine. I didn't even know I was married to one until after I was divorced.
I never knew that the word narcissist, even what it meant or stood by. I only started seeing what was happening through my marriage and seeing the type of person who was so different from who I was. we didn't even relate on the grounds of having the same type of understandings and compassions and things like that.
Nothing.
Him and I was never all about me. So, but I didn't even understand this until I started changing, when I started realizing that how unfulfilled I was through my life.
Yeah.
And seeing, especially once I had children, because the years before children, I kind of lived in my own kind of world because I worked. It wasn't all about that. But once the kids come in, your world changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Whole different ball game then.
Right.
Whole different ball game. And Karyn, one of the things that you said that really hit home with me is a narcissist is nothing but lies. And what's interesting to me is he didn't just lie about like the cheating or anything. He lied about everything. I mean, things I would just sit there and I'm like, well, that's not what happened. And it's like that because I don't. And even my kids tell me, God, Mom, you're such a bad liar. And it would just be things like that. If he did something and we knew it, he'd still say no. I mean, it was like conditioned in him to lie.
Okay, so what you guys are describing though is I'll tell you something my kids said that was I have the funniest children, and the reason they're funny is they've been through a lot of trauma, and that just makes you funny. But one of my kids, I don't remember my oldest or my youngest daughter, she said, Mom, she goes, Dad lies even when the truth is a better story.
Yeah, that's like pegs it for me.
Pegs it. It's like, okay, so here's my thing is having a background in psychology, having a passion for Jungian psychology, being married to someone who was a narcissist, getting a terminal diagnosis, which is what ended up causing created in me enough motivation to get out. Okay. I came, when I was in school, I've still got the DSM-5 up here. When I was in school, there was a DSM-3. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Narcissism was tiny. It was half a page. Okay. And it was considered some small percentage of the population. And so there's a lot of people now that say, oh, well, narcissism is not really more than it used to be. What it is we're just able to diagnose it now. And I'll say, no, that's not true. If you look at the indigenous populations, I'm going to use two in particular, the Hopi and the Ojibwa. They had legends that are hundreds and hundreds of years old, that in the end times, and I don't mean that in the Christian end of times, it's an end of an era, end times, there would come a spirit, and it was called the Wetiko spirit. And this Wetiko spirit was a cannibal spirit. And that is, and it would just basically overwhelm culture. And that's what we have right now. We have I personally think, this is my view, and it's not held by any other psychologist I can think of, but I have been very personally involved in it, and I've also experienced a lot of weirdness. Okay, when I say weirdness, I mean spiritual weirdness. I don't think that narcissistic personality disorder should be on the list of personality disorders, because it's the only personality disorder or mental health issue that doesn't affect the person. It affects everybody around them. And so what we have is this insane exponential rise in antipsychotics and anti-anxieties and antidepressants and all these tools to deal with the crazy people in your life. And I think that we live in this crazy time right now where, I think the shadow is the most important thing. And we're looking on look at our political leaders. I mean, even if it doesn't matter what your political positions are, we have 12 doctors, MDs, psychiatrists who went out on a limb and wrote a book about our past president, Trump, who said he was a clinical narcissist. They went against their own policies and their own, to say that, but that's the way that narcissism is diagnosed. It's never diagnosed by the person who, I mean, my ex would have never gone into therapy. We were in therapy, but my therapist, our combined therapist said, it's worthless. You know, you're married to a clinical narcissist. And I was just like, what? No, I thought I was crazy.
Well, they do. They make you question yourself, because something will be said. Well, you said this or you said that. It's like, I would never say that. That is not. So they mess with you. And
Yeah.
you know, one of the things I'm curious about is, I was in meditation once, and I do a lot of metaphysical work. And one of the things that I was told about him is he had immense soul loss, that there was nothing in there. It had taken off a long time ago. And it was just a physical body and a brain that was not infused with what a soul brings to the body when it merges.
Well, the Wetiko spirit in indigenous legend consumes. It's a cannibal. It eats. So a cannibal cannibalizes the person, and then it will cannibalize any energy that's around it. So you will feel exhausted around them. You will feel like you can't think. You will feel like, if you could imagine what it felt like spiritually to be cannibalized, that's exactly what it is. So I consider narcissism, and I treat it that way. I don't like to use the word treat. When I'm working with a client and we discern that their partner is in the spectrum of narcissism, then I treat it like a psycho-spiritual disease. It's not a personality disorder. And they know things. Okay, I don't know if you two have had any experience, but when I say this to other women or men, is that when you're interacting with them, they will know things. Like, my children called their dad a ring wraith, from the Lord, because he knew things he shouldn't know. He knew things like he was connected to the spirit realm in a dark way.
In a dark way. Mine definitely is, but
yeah.
He practices Palo Mayombe. So you're very connected to a spirit world of darkness when you practice the dark arts.
Right. So there isn't, I would hesitate to, here's what I would hesitate to do. I have done so much research on this. I even, spent some time, I have a lot of compassion. I mean, I have a tremendous amount of compassion for my ex, because of what you just said, Nicole, that emptiness, that soul vacuity, like there's nothing there. You can see it in their eyes, like nothing.
Oh.
It's a strange thing.
Yeah.
But it is, when I started studying, for instance, the relationship that my ex-husband had with his mother, and the amount of religion, because the biggest thing about a narcissist is they cannot take responsibility for anything. It terrifies them. And what I really noticed is that they usually have a very intense relationship with their father, as in a very distant but kind of afraid of their father. And their mother, there will be a lot of religious, like they might have gone to 6 or 7 or 12 years of Lutheran school or Catholic school or Presbyterian or, whatever it is, where it was, again, we're talking about that age where they're being programmed. And one of the deepest programs you're going to get in Christianity, which I consider totally antichrist, is that you're undeserving. You're unworthy. You're unworthy of everything. You're unworthy of abundance, love, everything that you need, you're unworthy. And so they put on a mask to be something that they're not, so they can somehow get worthiness, when in fact, the first thing something comes up, like, did you take the trash out? They can't have not done something correctly. You know what I'm saying? So it's so deep. It is, you're right. It's a very deep wound, but it's also a deep, deep program. And, there's, who was I listening to on Instagram this week? I think his name's Danny Morell. And his question was, can you heal a sex addict? Can you heal a narcissist? And he was like, oh, yes, you absolutely can. And I kind of sat there with my mouth open because I thought, I have never seen it happen. How's that? Because of the fact that in order to heal something, you have to have awareness and acknowledge it.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line of where you're never going to get a narcissist to go.
Exactly. My daughters have even asked their dad to go get help. He says, no, it's too late. It's too late. But the thing is he could never do his mirror work to look at him and know that he was a narcissist and or problem. He even diagnosed one of his friends. Oh, I've read all about it. He's a narcissist. Never saw any of it in himself. Not one iota.
Yeah. That's that total blind spot that if you're in a good relationship, that's one of the things about a good relationship is being able to tell each, be that companion that says, hey, I know where your blind spot is. And then that, they listen, but they don't hear that blind spot at all. And it's really big. It's huge.
Yeah. I just breathe out when I hear this and know that regardless of what anybody says or what anything, I did the right thing. It's like it just took the chains off me.
But culturally, here's the crazy part, is that culturally, every relationship ends. It either ends in divorce or death. But the fact that we live in a culture that has idolized marriage, and my little train of research has gone, way back, because my story was, we're kind of doing that woman thing, which we do a rabbit trail and then we come all the way back. Men can never do that. Anyway, one of the things that I did is that, having grown up in this religious environment, and also I read the Bible all the time because, I would go, that doesn't make sense. Well, when I was trying to get out of my marriage, I read it 6 times, and I'm talking cover to cover, twice out loud to my kids, my 4 kids. I homeschooled them when they were younger. So they were like, my oldest daughter, who's finishing a PhD right now, she said, Mom, I don't know why we did all that, but I slay at trivia. You cannot believe how good I am at trivia. So anyway, I read the Bible cover to cover, and then that is what precipitated my terminal diagnosis. Because when I read it cover to cover, as our culture reads the Bible, which is literally, this is why they're trying to get the Bible put into schools in Louisiana and Texas, because they want to read the creation story. But okay, don't get me started on that. But I read it, and if you read it literally, there is no way out of a marriage for a woman. And at that point, I think because of my subconscious beliefs, my body just said, oh, there's no way out. We're leaving. And I was dying. Wow. And I remember when I got home from the doctor's office, and I had no energy. Okay, so when you're dying, your systems are shutting down, one at a time. And I remember walking across the parking lot, and there was one of those speed bumps. And I remember having to pause because I didn't have the energy to walk over it. And I got home, and my ex-husband wasn't even interested. He asked me, how was the doctor's appointment? And then I started to explain it to him, and he walked off. So I never told him. But my daughter came to me, and she said, what happened? And I said, it's bad. The doctor said I'm not doing well, and that I'm physically dying. And she grabbed me. She was 12, and she grabbed me, and she said, Mom, she goes, you can't die. She goes, all the ladies at the church are going to bring us casseroles, and Dad's going to be a widower, and no one's going to know what happened. You can't die. And I said, you're right. I can't die. And somewhere within me, I brought that thing up, that I had when I had the rheumatoid arthritis. It was like, I'm not going to die. I am not going to die. I have 4 children, cannot leave them with this person who is, a spiritual monster. And
I'm hearing what you're saying, and our stories are overlapping each other, and I'm listening because I was actually kind of very much in the same ways as you were, but my ex had it was really funny. He had a mother that constantly put him on a pedestal on one side, but on the other side, he was very much, I always kept saying to him that he was kind of like suicidal in his own way, because he had a lot of terminal problems. He's gone now, but he never helped himself. And I was always so amazed that he could never help himself, because he had a heart attack, he had a kidney transplant, and never did he do anything to it was years of like, I was a nurse, but it was amazing of the things he wouldn't do to help himself get stronger and better. And when I saw him, my reaction was, I have to do whatever I possibly can do to keep my body strong, because my kids need me, because I didn't want my kids ever being in the throes of these people, because I saw these people as being, all of them were like another type of, like a devil. And it's very funny when I hear some of this.
Spiritual stand-in. And you may not realize it. I mean, you had more awareness.
Huge, but even as a child, the awareness that I had, as I would sit in the back seat of the car driving, and my parents are in the front, and listening to anger and things. As a young child, things did not feel good. I made a young conscious decision that I didn't want to be like my mother, who was always angry, and that I wanted to be able to. This was a little kid.
Yeah.
Awareness.
Yet you had programming, and you were energetically attracted to somebody who allowed you. I see it as a gift.
Twice I allowed myself.
Okay, who allowed you to shine light on that and heal it. Okay, so you really do get to a point where it is about consciousness. It is about creating awareness. But what you just said is it's almost like these people have a playbook, because I would consider my ex a hypochondriac. There was never a crisis. There was never something happening in our family with 4 children, me having, where he didn't have a bigger need. His need was much bigger.
Even to the point from the kids.
Even the children.
Yes.
I am in labor having our second child, and he is in the room ranting and raving about his issue that he's got, to the point that the doctors actually said, she was the sweetest thing in the world, maybe now is not a good time to be talking about that. She had a really soft spoken. And it was like, but think about this, Glenda, Nicole, it's the proverbial pot, frog in the pot of boiling water. You would have left if that's the way it was right at the beginning, but it wasn't that way. It comes slowly. You have responsibilities in your mind. You have commitments. You're also thinking marriage is something we're supposed to work at. No, see, that is not my position as a coach or a therapist. I have, having been through this, is that your cells, again, if you have a petri dish and you have cells in there and you put a drop of poison, all of those cells will dash to the other side of the petri dish, because they know what's good for them and what is not good for them. And we are taught to ignore what we feel. Right. And the reason is because, we need to be committed to this marriage. Love means unconditional love. Well, it doesn't mean unconditional relationship, but those things are conflated. And I feel like right now, our children have even more confusion, okay, because they're getting hit with so many different messages. And what's happening is we're seeing, these new generations not get married. And that is, everyone's freaking out about that, especially the religious right, because people need to be getting married, and we need to be having children. Well, not bringing them into this chaos, because we need to get some things sorted out. I love the name of your program because it's Let's Get Real. And we need to get real. We need to get real about what is going on the planet. We are in the sixth mass extinction. The oppression of women is at an all-time high, even though Jordan Peterson says there's no such thing as toxic patriarchy. We're watching it culminate now, because that's what happens. Well, let me give you a science. There's a science of cybernetics. And if you've heard of it, it's where they take like a surface, and it can be metal, usually it's metal, and they subject it to vibration. They put something like sand or sugar on it, and they subject it to a frequency and a vibration. And all of the little particles raise up, and they start doing this crazy shake, and it looks chaotic. It's everywhere. But when you get to tune it to a certain frequency, okay, like the frequency of love, all emotions have frequencies. Okay,
Right.
It will turn into the most perfect geometric pattern. Okay, and that's my hopefulness right now. That's what's going on the planet. We are witnessing and experiencing incredible amounts of chaos, incredible amounts of
All over. Yeah.
every single system that we have is crumbling, whether it is the medical system, the educational system, the political system, the relationship system, the religious system. You can see it, just falling apart. Well, it has to. All three of us, all of us women particularly, and I'm going to say particularly the women of the crone age. I love being this age. I mean, I was a maiden, I was a mother, I'm a crone, and I am tired of the view, okay, that what I have to offer, what I am, is finished, is done. And we get an energetic sense of that. I mean, I remember someone telling me about this. I was maybe 50, and I was like, yeah, that won't happen to me. Oh, it happened to me. It happens because our culture only values. Okay, you look at the youngness, and by the way, that also comes from biblical misinterpretations of Scripture. So no matter what we bring up here, I will be able to circle it back to the fact that we live in a Judeo-Christian country. Okay, it was founded by, for the most part, deists, but the people who came and founded this country were Calvinists. And Calvinists were, bootstrap capitalists. That's what we have now. We have bootstrap capitalism, and their whole point was that ancestral and generational belief, okay, has an expiration date, and it passed, and we're experiencing right now how that is shifting.
So let me ask, also being very conscious, unfortunately, of time, how do we start to help things to shift? We're at a point where things are breaking down, as you say it. You can see it. Everything is around that is looking in, and whether it's Canada, because I'm Canadian, or the U.S., where you are, it's all over, and it's happening in all these other countries as well. How do we start to shift to make something so, to spread more light, to bring more consciousness of what we're doing, to spread more love? Because we have to believe that, of course, my time on the planet isn't going to be as much now because I've lived through majority of my life, but I'm leaving behind. I have 2 children, and God willing, there might be more coming along the way of grandchildren or whatever. And it really saddens me to think that this is the way that our world is breaking down, and my kids are going to be left to what?
It's terrifying because, as mothers, I know that I worked really hard to create an environment for my children that was nurturing. Okay.
Yes.
And so in answer to that, what I do and what we can do on an individual basis is realize that we're midwives. We are birthing, okay? We are watching the birth of something that is shifting and changing. And midwives are powerful. We're here to go, it's going to be okay. Okay, not because we're just going to sit back and do nothing. No, because we need to be bringing awareness. Okay, we need to be not afraid to speak out. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing more and more people speaking out, more and more women speaking out. And I think it starts with the love of self. And we're not taught how to love ourselves. And because we live in a Judeo-Christian nation, it's considered selfish to love yourself. The view of self-love is, you can love yourself a little bit, but you really need to put other people first. Well, the reality is even as a mother, you have to put yourself first, because it's like the mother wolf. If the mother wolf doesn't go out and eat and take care of herself, she can't go home and vomit the food into the baby's mouth. And we're taught to put ourselves last. That's what Christian love looks like. Okay. And that's what I'm saying, is that's a false paradigm, and it's a myth, and it's destructive. So my very first thing is just to say, realize that what's happening now is a birthing and a dying at the same time. And we're mature. We don't have to get freaked out. There's a tendency to want to get freaked out. I mean, all you need to do is, look at the news. But
You mean the propaganda?
Yeah.
But the thing is that that's one of the things that comes with spiritual maturity, is saying we're passing through. And this was even prophesied in the Bible. Okay. And the Bible, in the way that we never got to my big, wonderful, weird, mystical experience. But one of the things that came out of all of this chaos was that I had a noetic mystical experience that shifted the way that I read sacred texts, whether it's the Vedas or the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible. And the Bible is not a book of prophecy. It's not a book of history. It's not a book of morality. It is a mind map of your brain. It's a psychology book. And when Jesus Christ was asked when all of these things would come to pass, his disciples were talking to them, and he told them, go into the city and you will find a house, and there will be a man with a pitcher of water. Right there should tell you that this is myth. Men did not carry pitchers of water. Okay. And when there's a pitcher of water, you go into the upper part of the house. Okay. The pitcher of water is the Aquarian age. It started about somewhere between 2012 and 2018. The symbol of Aquarius is actually a man with a pitcher of water. And you go into the upper house. That's your mind, the temple. Here, you go into the upper house, and everything is provided for you. Okay, so you're going to the right side. So we're talking, everything is metaphor and allegory and mystical interpretations in the Bible. And if you can't see it that way, then you're going to end up with Christian nationalism and people killing each other. And so, I know that's a long answer, but we're in a place of incredible responsibility to be extending love to each other, especially as mature women, okay, realizing that we're assisting in a birth and a death. I've been through both many times.
Me
You
too.
all have.
Yeah.
We're in the perfect place to do that. So.
And it's up to us as women and mothers, and to pass on these, like as we are aging, our wisdom is growing, and from that wisdom, it is our responsibility to teach others the most important things, such as, just as you're saying, to love thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And when we learn to love thyself, and it took me most of my life, because I never learned to, I put everybody else on the top of the list. And for many years, I didn't even make the list, never mind God on the list.
Absolutely.
Right. And it was only at a certain point where I realized, oh my God, I got to start looking after myself.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to teach our children and our children's children, and through people that we come in contact with, it's about taking care of yourself, loving others, respecting others, and those who don't respect you, that you don't need to accept that. That's self-worth.
Right. Well, there isn't a practitioner out there who doesn't say you need to love yourself, but it's incredibly absent that no one tells you how. And also, no one ever explains to you that if you're programming, that subconscious programming that is so powerful, that runs at 4 million bits per second, says that you don't love yourself and you can't love yourself and it's wrong to love yourself, then no amount of self-talk or mindset work, which everybody talks about now, which is very frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Because we're not doing mindset work. You can work yourself to death, and this is the masculine, okay, in terms of the 10%. And our planet is insanely weighted towards the masculine, but the feminine is the right side, and the feminine is the part where we are feeling, okay. And so when I'm teaching clients how to love themselves, we're doing it in a way, we're doing it energetically, because what we're doing is we're transforming those core beliefs of not deserving, of not loving, and we're transforming them to beliefs that are in alignment with the superconscious or with divine source energy. So for the most part, what we talked about today, and by the way, you told me everything just comes out because spirit does it. But I work with, and this is kind of how I have finally gotten down to understanding, is that I work with overgivers, and overgivers. Glenda, your face makes me laugh. We overgive, and what happens is you feel like life can never change. You're completely worn out. You feel powerless, and you secretly wish either they would die or you would die, right? It's like, and the reason is because we've never been taught to actually advocate for ourselves and say, wait a minute, it's okay for me to leave this marriage, like pronto, like out. Why I have so many women that I've worked with that have said, oh, it's so, especially in the domestic violence, in the courtroom, they'll say, it's the strangest thing. He knows exactly where my line is in the sand and he doesn't go past that. And I said, that's because that's energy. My ex-husband knew that a bald fist to the face I would consider physical violence. So everything else happened to me, vases thrown next to my head, all these things that I did not consider to be abuse on an energetic level. But why are we not setting our standard of good behavior way out here? Why don't we set it way out in front of us instead of way here where it's like this far from injury or death? So that's where the self-love aspect comes in, is I love myself enough to expect standards of good treatment.
And on that beautiful note, we've got to start winding up, because this can go on forever, and I could love for you to come back, because I don't even think we've even hit into the.
We didn't.
We'll come back, and we'll definitely do a special and bring you back, because this is so important, and I understand exactly, because you're talking to me right, like you're aiming right at me, because I thought of that, and it's taken me till this point in life where I have learned to love myself and learned to respect and all the rest. And it's been, the same thing of them to die or you to die. I get all of this. But the problem is there's too many people that don't.
Well, and why battle so hard when there are easy solutions in energy psychology to actually do it? Instead of, you and I did it the rough road.
Yeah.
We did it. It was hard, Nicole.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea.
Wasn't it easy?
We don't need to, and this has been my constant thing of why I do what I do, is because nobody has to go through this alone. And that's been most of my life as well. So Karyn, can you give us, as we're wrapping up today, and I know this is just the top of the iceberg, can you give one little golden nugget to our people that are watching, so that, if they're heading in there, give them something so they can hold on to?
On the in terms of the planet or them
In themselves, yes, themselves.
the biggest thing is that you have not been taught self-compassion. And think of how you would treat a little baby chick or a baby duck, something soft and fuzzy, or a puppy or whatever. Okay, just think of something that how you would treat that. Maybe it was injured, maybe it was hurt. What kind of compassion would you extend to that little thing? And try giving yourself that compassion. That's a personal story, but I just experienced this with my oldest son. And he's a perfectionist, wonder why, everything he went through, and all of my children are very accomplished, and he made a mistake, and it sent him into a depression. And I said, look at you made a mistake. Okay, that's called being human. Can you offer yourself some compassion? Turn around and just offer it to yourself, to your own heart, and say, you know what? It is okay. You're okay. I make mistakes, and that's okay. You're going to be okay.
So important. And I thank you. Wow. And as always, Nicole, please give us your summations for today.
Well, there's so many things that I could hit upon, but one of the things that really stands out to me is talking about our world that is in chaos right now. I mean, it's just in rapid decline and utter chaos. And one of the things that I know is that all the great empires lasted about 250 years. And the US, for one, is over its shelf life. And to have an empire crumble, it has to crumble all the way down, literally to the ashes, like the phoenix, and rise again. So we are in the middle. And to me, it's amazing to be alive at this time, to see the kind of change that is going to come about in terms of not only rebuilding anew, but one of the things that when we talk about the Bible, one of the things that happened with Governor Constantine, or Emperor Constantine, in the Roman times, he changed the Bible. He took the divine feminine out. And
43 books he took out.
In the Vatican, hid those books. And so what they did is they really formed that to suit men. And from that many years ago, here we are. And we have to realize that was never the truths. You take out, well, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. You're going to miss a lot of stuff. And the reason women are so important is we bring the kindness, we bring the love, we bring the ability to nurture. And you're not seeing that with many men these days. I'm seeing more and more men, but overall, you talk about people with their bootstraps, capitalism with bootstraps. That's what it's been. That's what it's been. And so I, for one, am very excited to be alive right now. I cannot wait to see the total collapse of this, because it has to be built back up, and it has to be built back up right, with the divine feminine leading the way. Boom.
Well, you just hit my subject. I have a book coming out called From Christianity to Consciousness, Lifting the Veil to Heal the Trauma of the Patriarchy.
There we go.
And then I have another book. It's called The 8 Religious Myths of Marriage That Are Destroying Your Sex Life, Wrecking Your Health, and Keeping You Stuck. And
We've got to
Well,
stick together, ladies.
yeah.
We're going to do it. It was so
Well,
great. Thank you.
I
Thank you
want to
both.
thank you very much for joining us today. It was quite a mindful, a wonderful thing. And we need to start looking at this more. Women need to start taking more of the lead because, just as you said, with love and compassion, that's how we should lead.
Right.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much for watching us today. And we'd love to hear your comments. So don't forget to love us, talk to us, and tell us what your opinion is. Thank you so much.